What's the matter with that cat there?
Must be full of reefer.
Full of reefers?
Yeah, man.
Mean that cat's high?
Sailing.
Sailing?
Lightly.
We now wander off the beaten path with an update from the Reefer Reporter.
Welcome to the Reefer Reporters, featuring Canadian and international cannabis news from the week of January the 23rd through to the 29th, 2018. Featuring news hawks Kim Cooper and myself, Al Graham. Well, Kim, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good today, Al. Lots going on in the cannabis community once again this week.
There sure is, I'll tell you. They were just setting up for the program took us longer than normal because there's just so much.
Absolutely. We had to weed and pick through and hunt for stories. It was not a problem to this week, that's for sure.
That's
we
right.
had to make choices on which ones we wanted to air.
Yeah, exactly. And we should let everybody know, we do hear the problem with Kim's audio. She's not beside a campfire. Wood's not crackling. We know she's having a problem. We are trying to solve it, though. So hopefully we can get it solved sooner than later.
Yes, we're addressing it. We're aware of it, and hopefully it'll be fixed real soon.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Kim, let's move on to the news.
Sounds good, Al. Sounds good. We've got several things on our plate today. We're going to go through some of them pretty quick, I think.
Yes, yeah. Well, we're covering stuff from the U.S., Canada. We're talking about some statistics. We're going to talk about some friends and some stuff that's local to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to start off the show tonight with a bit of a tribute to somebody that has been in the cannabis community for a very, very long time. He was a ganjapreneur, so to speak, in California, and he has left us this past weekend.
Yes, he has. He was involved in the first dispensary in the USA. Co-authored Proposition 215.
Yes, Mr. Dennis Peron lost his battle this past weekend and has lost his life in his battle through pain and is now resting in peace in California. So a great loss to the community as a whole for sure. He propelled the dispensary movement forward by leaps and bounds. It crossed the border into Canada and has grown ever since.
Oh, it's gone worldwide with it. It says here that 40 years. 40 years
Yep.
of his life he dedicated to this cause.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We have another friend of the show, Mr. Ted Smith. He picked up Dennis's torch and he carried it faithfully through and still is continuing today in Vancouver, BC, with the VCBC Cannabis Club celebrating its 22nd anniversary this year.
That's right. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So, yes, rest in peace, Dennis. You are a great fan to the community, great friend to all, and your presence will be greatly missed.
Sure will.
Absolutely.
It's another one. And it's always sad when when we lose people like this and the warriors within the cannabis community.
Absolutely. Moving to other news.
Yes.
Today, first story off the bat is one that you brought up for us today. High taxes spark sticker shock for marijuana customers in California.
Yes, it sure does. Like they showed an example of that someone had on Instagram. They posted a picture of their receipt. And they bought some high-end cannabis, maximum allowed by the state, an ounce. You're going to roll about 40 joints with it. Depends on the size of your joints. Retail costs before taxes, $450. After taxes, $587 for an ounce.
Unbelievable.
That is unreal.
I mean, you're talking like upwards of 25% tax. Now, I know everybody is gasping at this prospect, but now stop and think for a minute. If you're in Ontario, you will be subject to when legalized marijuana comes to Canada. You will be subject to your 13 to 14% GST tax, plus a 10% government excise tax. So Ontarians, you will also be paying between 23 and 24% taxes on your retail cannabis purchases pending legalization. So we are going to be in the very same boat.
Yeah, the excise tax, it's $1 per up to on a gram, and when you're buying more money that you're spending, the more money you're going to be paying on your taxes.
Absolutely. It's going to be 10% or $1. So if your grams are $8 a gram, your taxes will be $1 per gram, and that's only for the excise tax. If your grams are $13 to $15 a gram or whatever the cost is, it is 10%. So now it's $1.50, $1.30, $1.40, depending on the price of your cannabis. So yeah, you're going to pay a lot of taxes in Ontario too. So, hold on to your hats, people, because what the Californians going through right now, we're going to be going through in the very near future.
Yeah, I see they developed hashtags. California is screwing us, as well as I didn't vote for it, which is, a lot of people here, voted for legalization, but 23% tax is pretty steep.
It most certainly is, and I don't think anybody voted for that.
No. People realize that there's going to be tax, and the government realizes too that, and they have said this, that they've got to try to compete with the black market, and they don't want to overtax it. But 23% tax, on a $10 or on basically a gram, right, for $10.
Yep.
Yeah. And so
Too much.
each one you buy, yeah. Jeez. Just so you know, this example here in California, they are given a 15% excise tax from the state, and then there's other taxes added onto it and everything. That example of $587 came to about $20 a gram with tax in it.
Pretty expensive cannabis, if you ask me.
Sure is, and don't forget that's U.S. prices.
Yep. And from the U.S., we're flying all the way up to Northern Ontario is on the map. Ding, 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 ding. Of course, I have to bring a story from the north. This one is coming to you out of Sudbury.com. There's a news press release that was disclosed from Sudbury Police. Wanapatai First Nation in the Sudbury area. 3 people were arrested and charges are pending following a raid on First Nations Medicinal. First Nations Medicinal is owned and operated by a personal friend of mine, Chadwick McGregor. His property was raided by numerous police cars a few days ago. A lot of his property was seized from the property. Large quantities of his cannabis was removed from the property. Charges are pending analyzation from the Controlled Drugs and Substances Abuse people on pending the outcome of the testing on the products, and they're going to be laying charges at that time. So Chad, I've spoken to him personally. He tells me the dispensary will be reopening soon. This is not going to put him down.
Good. Well, I see here they say that there's no injuries during the raid.
Why would there be?
Correct. That's what I'm saying. I mean,
3 cheers for our police department. They didn't hurt anybody. Is that what we're supposed to do here?
Yeah. Yay! Finally, someone doesn't get injured. That's they cooperated.
Yay. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, Chad was peaceful. He's a peaceful man. He didn't put up any resistance or anything. They came in. He allowed them to do their thing without any resistance, of course. And he assures me that this isn't going to stop him. He will be reopening in a very, very near future.
Yeah. Well, hey, he said he thought he was operating legally.
That's right. He sells. He's not, a 19+ establishment. He's patient oriented only. You've got to have your card, basically. Show him proof that you're registered with an LP somewhere. You're maybe between your medications. You're waiting for a shipment, whatever the case may be. Shouldn't be going without your meds while you're waiting for Canada Post to deliver your next shipment. And he supplies a need for the Sudbury area for those patients. The police did this, and I don't know why. I don't know why the First Nations in the area and that community aren't standing up for this man's rights and going to bat for him as well.
Be interesting, because there are, when it comes to the reserves, I don't know whether Chad is First Nation is involved. Is he from the reserve? Does he live on the reserve?
It was the Anishinaabe Police Services that took part in the raid, and it was against First Nations medicinal marijuana dispensary. The deputy chief confirmed that the raid did take place, but he wasn't going into any details about anything until the charges are laid.
Yeah, but is he himself the Native American?
Yes, he is.
Okay, all right. That's what I was just checking.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're seeing down at this end where I'm located. There's lots of dispensaries on reserve, so on some of the reserves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a blooming industry on the reserve nations, and the ones especially that are serving a need to patients only, and they're patient only oriented. I don't understand the need for pushback against them. I really don't.
No, and some of them are really set up really good.
Yeah.
All righty. All right, and we're seeing more First Nations wanting to get involved.
Yes.
Going. Correct. They're wanting to talk to the government and stuff. They want to be involved in this. So, all right, so let's move on to our next story.
Yeah, where are we off to now?
We're off to something that will really, I think, really surprise a lot of people when it comes to this. You would think it'd be the opposite. We got about 3 minutes until we go to our 90-second music break. So, okay, and that is that legal cannabis shops could boost nearby property values.
Amazing story. I mean, here we have so much pushback, from Ontario government and the Ontario region. And this story coming out of Colorado, property values are going up the closer you live to a dispensary. This is wonderful news.
Yes, they got some information from doing a report from 2014 based on information from then. They found that the values of the homes close to the stores went up almost 10%.
10%. When you're talking about retail value, real estate value in cities like the City of Toronto, a tear-down house in the City of Toronto is $500,000. 10% of that is a lot of money.
Yeah. They say that because the traffic, foot traffic, cars driving stuff, it goes into the retail area and it spurs traffic to the stores. For a block or two. It's just, I've seen some of the dispensaries there when they were opening the 19-plus ones. Where first thing in the morning, there was a lineup down the street. And I can see this happening as well here.
Absolutely. And it's so great and encouraging to see news articles like this coming out that shows the benefits of having certified registered cannabis establishments operating in regular neighborhoods.
Yeah. Hey, it's why shove them into the industrial parks? And why not?
That's right.
You don't need them right in amongst the houses, but if there's a strip mall in there, where there's other businesses, then why not?
If there's a liquor store allowed, why isn't there a cannabis distributor allowed?
Yeah. We know which one is safer. We know that for sure. So, so it'll be interesting to see what happens over time. So.
Absolutely.
All right, Kim. Well, let's take a few seconds off here and go for a 90-second music break, and then we'll come back with more news.
Sounds great, Al. Stay tuned for more to come with Kim and Al on the Reefer Reporters.
Okay, Kim, we're back from our 90-second music break, and get some more news. What do we got next?
Next, we got a story coming from us written to a very good friend to the cannabis community, Miss Sarah Hanlon. She's writing from the Toronto Star these days, and she's writing about an article about an event that was attended by some very good friends and close relatives of the show.
Yes, she is. It was about Don't Tax My Medicine rally at Bill Monroe's downtown Toronto office.
Yeah, activists merged onto the finance minister's office in Toronto, led by Toronto's own Matt Murnaugh, friend of the show. It was attended by activists like Mary Jane, who is a great friend of the show. Tracey Curly was there. And of course, the one and only, our producer and friend, Al Rapp.
Yes, they were all down there. See them in their photos.
Yeah, they were protesting in front of the finance minister's office, saying don't tax meds. There was several dozen people there. All of the media was in attendance and videotaping it for the different stations across the city.
Yeah, well, see, medical cannabis is taxed, HST, and now they got this excise tax. So basically, you're looking at the 23% for the medical cannabis. And it's most prescribed medications aren't taxed. Why is cannabis taxed? It's ridiculous. There's no need for it whatsoever. Why they are making money on the sick, and it's ridiculous.
It most certainly is. Matt Murnaugh led the chanters while they were there. It was an excellent turnout. One of the chants that they were repeating was, "Don't treat patients with contempt. Our meds should be tax exempt." And there was dozens of people on board, including some representatives from an LP.
Yes, there was. I believe it was Aurora that was present.
Yes, that's correct. Aurora, the representative from Aurora Cannabis was there. A great turnout of a crowd. Amy Brown was there. Tracey Curly, I mentioned earlier. A large crowd.
Yeah, it was organized by the Canadians for Fair Access to Medical Marijuana. Jonathan Zaid, he organized all that.
Yeah. And in conjunction with that, while that was going on and taking place, just down the street at Planet Paradise, we had other friends of the show as well. Mr. Jack Lloyd, along with Abi Roach, was announcing the launch of Sensible on Ontario, and they are looking to petition the government to allow lounges and private venues to have the right to sell cannabis from their venues.
And they should. And actually, that just sort of brings us right into our next story, doesn't it?
It most certainly does.
Yes, and that is the higher limits down there. It's a vapor lounge down in the Windsor area. They also had a launch down there for Sensible Ontario as well. Higher limits, it says here, it's one of Canada's largest cannabis lounges, 60,000 people through in the last 2 years. Down there on the border, and they want to be able to sell cannabis just like you buy a shot at the bar. Be able to sell, a gram or half a gram to a customer when they come to the counter.
Absolutely, consumption for use, purchase for consumption right at the place that you're consuming. It makes perfect sense. We do it in bars all the time by selling alcohol by the glass or by the ounce. Why not do it with cannabis? To quote Jonathan Leitke, he's a big mover and shaker down there. He's got things happening in southern Ontario, that's for sure. And like he says, these are exciting times for Windsor. We're going to see massive amounts of tourism and new business, and I would hope that local politicians would join in with me requesting common sense legalization and regulations to allow for Windsor businesses to take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I think that can be said for communities across the province as well as the country.
Well, he goes on to say in the article that there's 7.5 million American cannabis consumers within a 3-hour drive of Windsor.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And we have that in northern Ontario as well, in our Sioux region. We cross Michigan there.
Right. Correct.
And, we've got a lot of U.S. tourism coming through all the way through to Timmins, which is about a 3-hour drive to the Sioux. And we cross the border there as well. So we're in the same boat up here in the north. There's a lot of tourism that can be had off of
Yeah.
this if it's handled correctly.
Yeah, well, I know when the Hemp Fest was held up there, people were coming across that northern border, making their way there. I also see in this article here, in the CTV news website, that John Linke is asking for Ontario's for an exemption for Ontario's smoke-free law to allow these places to operate.
And it should be had, especially under I'm going to go back to medicinal, but I mean, I know he's more focused on the rec market and the
Sure.
market as a whole. But I think medicinal purposes for sure, we have to have patient-oriented lounges. If they're not going to allow for everybody right away, at least allow for patient-oriented lounges to start. And maybe that can be the crack in the door or the carpet rolled out to advance to an everybody lounge or an all persons lounge at a future date.
It'd be nice just to get everybody in there the first time, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So,
Our government likes to work slow, but it can't be so slow that it's at patients' expense.
Now, and another reason, as we've mentioned in previous shows, why this is so important is, and we're seeing more in the news this last week, is the fact that landlords, people who rent houses, condos, even people who bought condos, they may not be able to consume within their residence. And the lounge will give these people a place to go to.
Absolutely. And it's absolutely required, I mean, as a person that travels to Southern Ontario on a regular basis, I stay in hotels. Most hotels are smoke-free. What am I supposed to do when I go to Toronto and I'm out and about shopping and touring around and visiting friends? I need a lounge to stop into when I'm going in between my places, or I'm going to be stuck consuming in a car or consuming on the street.
Yeah, exactly. Got to give them a place to go because they're going to consume it someplace where they don't want it done, and people are going to end up dealing with law cases, and patients shouldn't have to be dealing with that.
No, absolutely not.
Because they're going to be affected. They're affected by this just as well as rec users. So.
Patients are affected by many things, and it can lead into, depressions and all kinds of things, which kind of leads into our next story.
Well, before we get to that story, let's touch on still one little bit of the lounge part, and that is the fact that you got a place like Niagara Falls, that's right on the border there. That there's a counselor there that has, trying to get the city council to put the information into this where Ontario has requested, for lounges and all that, and trying to get input from the public, input from the city, saying how it's going to increase the tourism to Niagara Falls.
Yeah, that's it's very much tied together with what's going on in Windsor for sure. Niagara Falls, it's all one large area. The feedback portion. How much feedback does this government require to figure out what the people want?
Yeah, well, I don't know how much they're wanting, but I would think if cities are writing to them in favor, that's got to be a bonus for the little guy whose voice who think they don't get heard.
Yeah. For sure.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
all
for
right.
sure.
So we got cities screaming for lounges. We got businesses screaming for lounges. We got people wanting lounges. The government's got to do it. So let's give it to them. All right.
Absolutely.
Where should we go? Where are we off to next here, Kim?
Well, we're talking a little bit about depression. So I'd like to bring up an article from the 12 High Chicks. Our friends over in BC, the 12 High Chicks, don't forget about me. Depression and Cannabis is an article posted by Jay Schmoker. I hope I say it right, Schmoker. This is a tribute to late activists that have been with us and have gone. Mary Elizabeth Guide and Stephanie Lee Hooker. This article is kind of tough for me to talk about a little bit. Stephanie was a friend of mine. She was a friend of the show. She was a friend of mine. She was a friend of no, sir. I helped this young lady out on a couple of occasions who struggled great and dearly with depression. She finally, at the end, Steph took her life, and it was due to depression. And this article talks a lot about that, and it certainly discusses on how cannabis can help you through depression and what it does when you're tormented, and how much it can help.
Oh, yes, big time. You know, it's you know, as there's a line in the article here where they say, you know, if you're struggling, reach out for help. If you see someone struggling, you know, help, give them a hand if you can, if you're capable of doing that. And don't belittle people like that, because that only makes things worse.
Absolutely. A lot of people, you know, didn't believe Stephanie.
Yeah.
You know, they questioned her. You know, she would try and speak about her illness to people and say, you know, this is what I'm going through. Yeah. And she was met, you know, a lot of times with hostility and with people, you know, questioning her motives for coming out and speaking about her illness. Well, that certainly did not help her situation whatsoever. Yeah. You know, she had a service dog named Schrader. Schrader and Steph stayed with us for a short time. Schrader was a wonderful dog, and Steph loved him very, very much. I'm glad that her son is now has the dog and is taking care of him and going forward with his life, and it's giving him some solace being next to Schrader in that way. I
see here they got a picture of Stephanie with a picture with the writer, and the writer is Tracey Curly.
Yes, another great friend to the show, Tracey Curly. We've interviewed a couple times on the show for the Mom Cup, or for the Karma Cup, I'm sorry. Yeah. And, you know, and stuff. And she was actually a patient on the show during her interview, having a treatment at the time. So, you know, Tracey is a trooper all the way through. And she writes a wonderfully touching story about, you know, people's attitudes towards depression and people that are trying to discuss their struggle with it.
She also touches on another friend of hers, Mary Elizabeth Woodside, known as Me.
Yes.
Yeah, and she goes through, talks about how they met. They were at Harvest Fest. They didn't know each other, and they actually bumped into each other, like literally bumped into each other. And, you know, sort of apologized and introduced themselves and went, wow, that's who you are? Jeez, I wanted to meet you for a long time. So, you know, she had some good stories to, you know, memories in order to put into this article as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, Tracey's been involved in the grassroots portion of this movement for so long, and she's been involved in so many people's lives and knows so many of these people's stories that it's wonderful that she has the talent, the strength, and the courage to come forward and speak for those of us that are no longer here to do so.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, Kim, we should head for another 90-second music break.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. We'll do that, and we'll continue news when we come back. How is that? Sounds good?
Awesome.
Okay.
Get down in those mountains. Picked up some girls on the side of the road. Said, baby, got extra tickets. Would you come with us to that show? So we was funking out, just a dancing and a grooving. Drinking beers, smoking weed, just moving and moving and moving. Band takes the stage, they started ripping my favorite song. They said, baby, I'm glad you picked me up and brought me along.
Okay, Kim, we're back from our music break, and we're going to continue with our news here.
Sounds great.
Yes. Now, there was a very interesting broadcast the other night by the Fifth Estate on CBC. It was about dealing with people driving while smoking cannabis.
Yeah, I saw it. I
What?
saw it. Okay, I'm gonna take this away here for a second, Al, and I'm gonna say something to our listenership.
Can I
Now,
ask what you
listen-
had for dinner first?
Yeah, what did I have for dinner, Al? I had crow. That's what I had because I'm gonna eat crow right now. Now listen up and listen good because this don't happen very often. I was completely wrong. And I take back, I 100% recant my statement from last week's show when we were discussing people getting pulled over who are intoxicated on their various things. I reiterated that I trusted the police's guidance and training on the finger to nose touching and being able to determine whether or not somebody's stoned. And I thought it was a good idea. I really did. Until I saw the Fifth Estate. Okay, my view is completely changed. The article is called, it's like flipping a coin. Well, that's exactly what happened. This coin right here flipped. I am on the opposite side of this coin now. We need to do away with this roadside testing. It shouldn't be happening. It's too subjective. And I apologize for my previous stance. There we go.
Well, yes, the program really showed a couple cases of big errors in the DRE where they arrested people that weren't stoned, that hadn't been consuming. There was one incident where the lady was in an accident. She drove into a vehicle that was parked on the side of the road, and they said after doing all the touch the nose and the regular observations for people who have been drinking alcohol, they determined that she was high on cannabis.
Yeah. And I mean, when I saw that and I saw that car that she was in, the aftermath of that car that she was in, all I kept thinking to myself, why wasn't she in an ambulance?
Yeah.
Why was she even subjected to this test in the fucking first place? I mean, I was infuriated by that. I mean, that the police have the right to circumvent, emergency services is outrageous to me.
Yeah. Well, they said that they found that she was unsteady on her feet. She had white coated tongue, and she was fumbling and had poor dexterity. So they arrested her, put handcuffs for her in jail.
Yeah, I mean, and her legs were filled with bruises, so that's why she was unsteady on her feet. She totaled her car, there was nothing left. The airbag exploded in her face, almost knocking her unconscious. She had a head injury, so of course she's not going to pass any tests.
Her tongue was all white because of the medication that she uses. She's in shock from the accident, but yet the officer there, they said that she had been high, and they took her into the DRE and said the same thing.
Yeah,
yeah. But they did end up dropping the charges on her when they realized that they weren't going anywhere with this. But she wasn't the only one.
Yeah, there was several instances throughout this whole episode of The Fifth Estate. I encourage everybody to watch this. It was absolutely phenomenal.
This one was just unreal as well, where the guy was having a stroke. He was in the middle of a stroke. That's why he had an accident, because he was having a stroke, and they arrested him. He was 5.5 hours or 6 hours dealing with this at the police station when he should have had his medication. And because he didn't have medication, the guy is permanently affected with speech impediment, memory loss, and other things from not having medication because they thought he was high, but yet he was under medical duress.
Yeah, so instead of, calling an ambulance for somebody that looks like they're having a stroke, let's just assume they're stoned.
Yeah.
This is crazy thinking. You know, when I said what I said last week about trusting these things, you know, I was going on, I guess, the assumption that our police forces are human beings with brains, but apparently I was incorrect in that assumption.
Yeah. Well, as they say, you know, when an officer brings somebody in, you know, does that DRE officer that's at the police station sort of have some obligation to, you know, not make his buddy look bad?
That's right.
You know, and agree?
That's right. The DRE is going to agree because otherwise his friend has a black eye for bringing somebody in that wasn't warranted. So how can you have to throw out the entire system if that's how it's based?
Yeah, and you know, really part of the sad thing is the DREs have been approved by the Supreme Court of Canada to be used as expert witnesses.
I can't understand that. I can't understand that because it's been thrown out south of the border. Anywhere in the United States, you cannot use a DRE as an expert witness. It has been tossed out as irrelevant information.
Yeah, because they're not reliable. All it does is show consumption. It doesn't show intoxication.
No.
You know?
It shows that you perhaps need medical care.
Yeah, and there was perfect examples twice on this show. So yeah, you should catch it. CBC website. Take a look.
And bookmark this episode because you probably won't hear that again anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, Cam, let's move on to the next one. Let's see.
Sounds good.
We got one here from the Financial Post. Boomers bringing cannabis use with them. It's a very good picture of cannabis use here in Canada. They studied things from 1961 right through to 2017. It says here that there's $6 billion spent on cannabis every year. You know, the government's trying to eliminate the black market. They're trying to eliminate a $6 billion business.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
and they're going to charge 23%. They're going to charge 23% tax.
Yeah, I mean, how are you going to eliminate the black market with that? You're never going to eliminate the black market with that. It's never going to work. I mean, since 2000 on average, 18% of pot purchases have only 18% have been made by kids 15 to 17-year-olds. 33% of the pot purchases are made by 18 to 24-year-olds and by middle age, 25 to 44-year-olds. After that, 40% of the cannabis purchases are made by those 45 to 64. And that's growing in 2017. Baby boomers are the ones that are buying cannabis, okay? And if we have to pay outrageous prices and outrageous fees and taxes, we're going to continue using the avenues we have been using for the last 40 years. Why would we go into the legal stores if it's going to cost us more for a questionable product?
Well, that example earlier was perfect. You know, why would you go spend $457 on an ounce of cannabis when you can get it down off your buddy down the street for $150 to $250?
That's right. So, I mean, I don't understand. Are the powers that be not watching the numbers and seeing these percentages? You know, the average Canadian, the most people that are buying this are the baby boomers. We're talking, 45 and up are the ones that are purchasing this product.
It used to be a time where you could always say that, the older people were non-cannabis smokers. They were more conservative and all that. Now that those people who were smoking cannabis in the 60s and 70s are now becoming those older folks. And
that's right.
The demographic has just moved right up into that age area. And you cannot discriminate against older people because they smoke cannabis too,
That's right. I continually remind people, it's us old guys, that started all of this. Okay. We're the ones that brought this forward. We have to bear in mind, Ozzy Osbourne is in his 70s. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the age demographic we are talking about here, people.
Yeah, they say that more than 90% of the cannabis use was non-legal, as well as they say that the average price has been declining since 1990. They say the average price right now for a gram is $7.50.
Yeah. Well, not here.
Not here, yeah. You can add another, about $1.50, $2
Yeah.
for your tax, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's coming. It's coming. All right, we got about 4 minutes left here. We got one more news article to touch on.
We do, and this is about another chief.
Yeah, it's about another dispensary. This is about in Regina, where the police are going around and warning the dispensaries owners that you keep operating, we're going to come and visit you.
Yeah, this chief happens to be a chief of police.
That's right.
Regina Police Services are they're approaching all of the dispensaries. A couple of the people that are in this particular article are also friends of the show. Miss Kelly Casada was a guest on the Pace Radio show with our joint host, Alicia. Along with somebody else in this
Pat
article.
Warnicki. He was also on the past guest on the Pace Radio show with Alicia too. Best Bud Society. He's interviewed in this article as well. He says that they're going to be fighting as much as we can to stay open. We'll be talking to lawyers and talking to different politicians as well. Trying to make changes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Kelly Casada is quoted in saying, "I will be here for any patient that walks through the door." Still doing patient consulting, patients pointing them in the right direction for a doctor so they can get a prescription and so that we can start the paperwork that needs to be done. They're not letting this put them down.
Pat cites a Supreme Court of Canada ruling that dictates that people have reasonable access to medical marijuana if they're prescribed. And he says that people use suppositories, they use skin creams, they use these things, but they're not accessible through the LP, so it's not going together with the Supreme Court of Canada ruling. So the dispensaries are offering these services instead.
That's right.
Or pop-up markets.
That's right. They went on, to say, people need to know what their medications are. They need the education, and that's what they do in their offices. They give the education. You don't get that from the LPs. You don't get that from your pharmacy. You don't get that from anywhere. They're supplying a need.
It says here that Pat and Kelly are also looking into the province's lottery system to receive hopefully one of the 6 licenses to establish the recreational cannabis dispensaries. So some privatization, unlike what we're not getting here in Ontario.
Yep. And congratulations to them. I hope that they're able to get that. But at least they're pursuing the legal and legitimate means to come forward in the future. And I hope this police chief backs off and just lets everything play out and let everybody get their paperwork in order before he starts cracking down.
Yeah. So it'd be nice that if he allows them to do that, because they obviously can see that they're doing a benefit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just the law that they're sworn to uphold the law, but if a law, as I say, if a law is not being supported by the people, then the law is no good.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Kim, that was our Reefer Report for today. What do you think? Got any more? Or are we done?
I think that's pretty much it for this week, Al. That's all I've got up on my plate anyway. We covered quite a bit, and I'm thrilled to see so many past guests of the show making the news these days.
Exactly. I agree. Okay, everybody. Well, that's our Reefer Report for January the 23rd to the 29th, 2018. And in closing, we'd like to say thank you to everybody for listening to our Cannabis News podcast. If you enjoyed it, don't forget, share it with your friends, your relatives, even strangers. Just share it. And as we depart, there's going to be a little bit more of our favorite cannabis music. Talk to you all next week.
the van with my friends and we drove over 3 hours. I crossed some borders, man, to get down in those mountains. Picked up some girls on the side of the road. Said, baby, got extra tickets. Would you come with us to that show? So we was funking out, just a dancing and a grooving. Drinking beers, smoking weed, just moving and moving and moving. Band takes the stage, they started ripping my favorite song. They said, baby, I'm glad you picked me up and brought me along. After the show, man, we headed out to the parking lot. Lots of folks sitting around getting way messed up. This thing got crazy, man, and I had to split. Lost my mind, jumped in a ride. We drove down further, man, south past the grotto. Town to town, we went to Colorado. We found another show and scored ourselves some tickets. Met some girls, man, and now it's time to dig it. She loved to get high, yeah. She loved to get high. She loved to get
or something like that.